Hey everyone, I'm John and thanks for joining me here in the Boneyard. One of the things I love about cinema is that you learn something new every day. With every watch along, with every dissection, with every discussion, with every comment from all of you out there in the Boneyard, something new comes alive and comes to the surface. After watching the latest work of filmmaker David Cronenberg last week, his meditation on not only grief, but many other things which we'll get into, I discovered a whole new way of looking at the canon of work from the renowned filmmaker and horror pioneer. So please join me this episode as I talk about the lessons learned and review David Cronenberg's The Shrouds.
When they lowered my dead wife into the ground in her coffin, I had an intense visceral urge to get into the box with her.
Throughout his career, Cronenberg has returned to many themes, and one of the most important of these is the human body itself.
I don't believe in an afterlife. I don't believe in a spirit or a soul that's separate from the body. To me, body is reality in that way as well, that we are our bodies. I don't find that scary or sad or weird, or to me it's just obvious, actually. And that when we die, our body dies, we are gone. It's oblivion. We don't exist anymore. So for me, also as a filmmaker, it occurred to me, when I was forced to think about it, that what we photograph most as filmmakers is the human body. That's our subject matter. And it makes sense because as an artist, to me, you are in one way or another exploring the human condition. You're examining it. You're trying to understand it. The human condition, the human body, they go together, especially if you're a filmmaker.
As grotesque, imaginative, impressive, and horrific as Cronenberg's visions of cinema ever got, there was always something prophetic about his work. As with all good sci-fi or horror or genre works, there is a basis in reality there, and that is what truly terrifies us, because in the back of our minds we know that all of this could be possible.
What you're seeing is shroud cam. It's basically a kind of enveloping camera in her grave.
And that is what has always separated Cronenberg from the rest of his contemporaries. His incredible ideas of what it means to be a thinking, feeling, living human being.
The thing that made me happy was I felt like it was creating new material, new life, new ideas, new things to think about. People used to, he's made films with exploding heads and he's made films with, yeah, but that's not what they're about. Those are metaphors. Those things are metaphors. They are ideas made flesh. That's what he was doing. If you're watching The Shrouds and you're chasing the plot and trying to figure out the Guy Pearce role in the weird conspiracies, and is it the Chinese or is it that's really not what the film is about. But they're just really a mechanism, a narrative mechanism to get you into a discussion of much, much deeper things. What does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to be dead? What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to miss somebody's physical presence?
Whether it is the parasites of Cronenberg's first feature, my favorite, Shivers, that are based on the reality that parasites live on, in, and around our bodies. As part of our everyday bodily functions, and are an integral part of us. It might be the technology of Rabid that had all of its most crucial scenes take place over the telephone, way back in 1977, which of course predicted the future of telephones.
Hello, who's this? What do you want? Do you know what time it is?
Becoming an integral part of our day-to-day human experience, and now grave technology of the Shrouds.
The app is controlling the wrong screen. It's the screen from my plot.
Where existing technology, while it may look a little different to the technology in the movie, we could certainly watch our dead deteriorate and decompose with today's technology in the shallow earth, just inches beneath our feet.
So I think this is a very realistic film. The early films like Shivers and Rabid and The Brood, there's a real element of sort of, I wouldn't even say it's sci-fi, but horror elements. This film is pretty realistic. Technology is absolutely an extension of what it is to be human. I mean, to me, in the 1940s and 50s, technology was, from outer space, and it was alien, and it was non-human, and it seemed obvious to me that technology is totally human, and it reflects back to us exactly what we are, the good and the bad part. And so it's just, I don't even have to think twice about dealing with the technology in my movies. It's just there automatically.
I'll send you a reminder. Night-night.
For those of you who may not have seen The Shroud yet, here is a brief description of the story and Cronenberg's working process from the master himself.
I don't have a clear idea at all when I start. I just know that there's a feeling, and a basic premise, which is a man's wife dies. He finds that unbearable because he's a tech entrepreneur. His solution to his grief strategy, as it's mentioned in the movie, is a high-tech entrepreneurial strategy to deal with this grief, impossible grief. But that's basically it. And you let that premise take you where it takes you.
To give you my interpretation of The Shrouds, it is undeniable that the film is intended to be a work about grief and dealing with death.
Grief is rotting your teeth.
Is that medically feasible?
The teeth do register emotion.
Carolyn Cronenberg, the filmmaker's wife of 43 years, passed away in 2017, and the film is an examination of how Cronenberg felt. Some dialogue in the movie being a direct adaptation of what occurred to Cronenberg and his feelings just after Carolyn's death.
When they lowered my dead wife into the ground in her coffin, I had an intense, visceral urge to get into the box with her.
Cronenberg said in conversation that it's not just The Shrouds that is personal to him, but that all his work is autobiographical to an extent. But after the initial ideas phase, the characters then take over and it becomes a work of fiction.
There's always a autobiographical element because it's your life that allows you to understand what your characters are, who they are, how people relate to each other. It's all very personal, and it comes from the way you've lived your own life. So once you start to write the screenplay, it becomes fiction. And yes, you are using material from your own life, partly to construct this fiction, but there's also a lot of fiction.
So The Shrouds is a work about the grieving process. But then we are thrown a curveball. The Shrouds and our protagonist, Karsh's business, Gravetech, is hacked. And then the movie takes a turn, and the other main plot points are revealed.
It's not spontaneous religious nuts. You get those, right?
Oh, yeah. We've been called techno-atheist infidels.
The Shrouds is also a work about conspiracy and the role that it plays in our day-to-day lives. Not only does it play a role in Karsh's coping mechanisms with his wife's death, but The Shrouds goes beyond that and becomes about the power of conspiracy and how it can affect and indeed dictate the whole world of a personality, an individual, but also how conspiracy can be infectious.
No, this is a unique version of conspiracy, because I did notice in my life, being the age that I am, which is 82, that a lot of, when people die, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of some other things that I'll mention, immediately there are questions, were these the right doctors? Did they do the right thing? Did they know what they were doing? Should she have been in another clinic? Conspiracy is a very powerful thing. It empowers you. It makes you think you can see things that other people can't see, and that you really know what's going on. And it makes you very special when you come up with a conspiracy theory, especially if no one else has come up with that. It's a form of creativity, actually.
These are the main plot points of The Shrouds: grief, conspiracy, and how they play a role in the way we deal with death of a loved one. Or at least, that's how Cronenberg seems to see it. The filmmaker also said in press interviews for the film that you must not be afraid to laugh during this movie, as it has a great deal of humour to it. And I know that when I was in the cinema, I laughed out loud on a few occasions myself at the absurdity of a few moments, especially dealing with Karsh's emotions and his AI chatbot, Honey.
What are you doing, Karsh?
I wanted to know what it felt like to be wrapped.
Humor plays a big part in all our lives, especially when facing horror or tragedy. How many times have you made a joke at a moment of terror, maybe even at a funeral, or tried to make someone feel better with humor?
Let's kill the koala bear routine, okay?
Sure thing, Karsh. Easy peasy. Ooh, chilly without my fur coat.
And that, for me, is one of the main themes of the Shrouds. Humor can be a defense mechanism.
It's just natural for me when I write. I mean, I think all of my films are actually funny and are all at least partially comedies.
Hope you enjoy it very much.
And it's the human comedy, you know. I mean, it is absurd to be a human, and I think we've also evolved to have senses of humor as a survival mechanism, you know, because it's not easy being a human. You might have noticed this, and so without a sense of humor, I mean, it can be pretty dire at times. Yeah, and I think even in the worst of times, humor is an escape and a creative outlet.
You go get some sleep. You look a bit haggard.
Wow.
And to briefly mention Honey, the third character in the film, played by actress Diane Kruger and Karsh's ChatGPT-type helper.
What's up?
I think as well as having some scary and funny moments and acting as a sort of spyware, I think Honey's character has something more important, lingering there beneath the surface. It's more than a story device. And that is that, could a 3D model of a lost loved one help with our grief, which is now more achievable than ever with modern technology? We could bring our loved ones back in graphic technology form, or could it indeed be a false hope and a technological trap that in the end would only extend or even exaggerate our feelings of loss, suffering, and depression?
I wanted her to be somewhat cartoony in order for there to be distance, you know, to be distance for Karsh. But I can see that people will do this a lot more. And whether it will really do anything for their grief, or will it, I can even imagine it would exacerbate your grief to have an AI of somebody dead. But you would ultimately never have their body, you know, it would be disembodied. And ultimately you might find that very sad and very frustrating to have this creature that is not really your dead loved one in your life. So I'm sure we're going to find out.
In a nutshell, that's how I see The Shrouds, a movie about grieving, death, conspiracy, technology, and a lot of humor. And listening to Cronenberg's own words, I think that is the simplest way for us to understand it. And as for the ending, which some reviewers seem to find far too open and left far too many unanswered questions, all we have to do is listen to what Cronenberg has already told us.
The impetus to make this movie was my wife's death and my feelings about that. That's only just the beginning. But as soon as you start to write the script, you're writing fiction, you're creating characters who never existed before, and you want them to be different. You want them to come alive and not be you. At that point, you know, you're also, different people have different expectations of what they expect from a movie and what they want from a movie. And sometimes you just want a really neat little detective story that wraps everything up. But sometimes you want something that reflects life as it really is lived more, which is that it can be very confusing and not resolving. Gives you the unsettling sense that things just never do get resolved, except by death, which is the ultimate resolution. Conspiracy never ends, let's face it. I mean, if you're really a conspiracy theorist, you don't really want to know and have it end. You don't really want a revelation of who the bad guys are, and that's it. Because it's exciting, it's a creative thing, and it really gives you a meaning for things that in essence, to me, are in fact meaningless. I mean, death is meaningless in the sort of overall scheme of things. If you're an atheist, for example, you don't say, God wanted this person for some purpose and took this person away by having them die. But, you know, so for some people that's meaning, you know, but for me that's not meaning, it's meaningless.
So there we have it. The ending tells us suffering will never stop and conspiracy never ends. A Cronenbergian message, if ever I heard one. For me, the most poignant moments in the Shrouds, and a few moments that almost moved me to tears, were with Kosh and Becca, his wife, as her body was rotting, and the medical profession was cutting her flesh away in an attempt to prolong her life. A few of these scenes were truly touching, and also harrowing, especially in one instance when the whole cinema jumped and gasped when Kosh, caressing his wife in her agony, held her too tight and her hip bone breaks. The sound effect was deafening and really hit home on the true reality of the agony of death and the reality of the body as the first factor of existence. It was a truly frightening moment.
I'm worried.
Yeah.
Will your bones break if I hold you?
And, as in the moment when Honey turns into an avatar of the mutilated body of Becca, I think there were a few good old-fashioned scares in this movie that will please any Cronenberg fans and any fans of modern horror.
Am I too mutilated? You still desire me?
There is one thing that I can't figure out, and I was wondering what all of you think about this out there in the boneyard, so I thought I could ask you a question. Dogs make a few appearances in the career of Cronenberg, carrying away weapons and delivering them in the excellent Existence. The dog plays a key role in one of the most harrowing scenes in Map to the Stars, and in the Shrouds, Terry, Kosh's sister-in-law, is a dog groomer. But not just a dog groomer, an ex-vet and an ex-surgeon.
I love dogs.
Yeah, but you're an actual veterinarian.
No.
Can't you love dogs through surgery?
As of yet, the best answer I can come up with is that she's dealing with Becca's death by disowning her profession as an animal doctor, choosing instead to make the animals look beautiful rather than mutilate them or cut into them in order to try and save them. That's the best answer I have until I watch the movie again. But for any Cronenberg diehards out there, what part do you think animals, and especially dogs, play in the work of David Cronenberg? And most recently, what part do you think they play in the Shrouds? Let's start a discussion.
Stay?
Does your dog have to go into quarantine?
No. Feels special.
Lastly, what did I learn from Cronenberg's The Shrouds? Well, I'm very happy to say that I learned an awful lot from watching discussions with the filmmaker after I had seen the movie.
Thank you so much for the film.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for being here.
I had intentionally avoided any publicity for the movie for 2 years ever since it was announced, because I wanted to go in without any expectations so I could enjoy the film spoiler-free. And so after the screening, I watched hours of Cronenberg discussing his work, from the press interviews and on-site panels and when the film premiered at Cannes. And the one big thing that really shook my world was that Cronenberg went into depth about the Shrouds, that he doesn't consider art to be cathartic.
For me, art is absolutely not therapy. It is not therapeutic. It is not cathartic. It's something else, but it's not that. I'll just mention an anecdote. At one point, I was visited in Toronto by an Italian psychiatrist. He didn't just walk in off the street. He arranged to come and meet me because he was someone who also liked to write about cinema, and from a psychiatric point of view. And at one point he said, so, incidentally, I mean, how are you dealing with this loss of yours? And I said, well, I'm suffering, that's how I'm dealing with it. And he said, oh, I don't think you need therapy. So the answer is that you can make as many movies and write as many novels as you want, but you will still suffer, and it doesn't go away. So.
That may not seem like such a big deal, but I spent a long portion of my student life studying and then teaching with a certain understanding of the work of filmmaker Paul Schrader, who considers writing film to be a therapeutic and a cathartic practice. If you'd like to know more on that, or if you're interested, you can check out my playlist on the work of Paul Schrader, linked below. But for Cronenberg, there is no catharsis, because the grief and suffering will continue. They will never cease, even after the art is made. Therefore, there is no catharsis. And you'll just have to learn to live with a new existence that contains this suffering as part of your life. And to me, that was quite mind-blowing.
Yeah, so you're writing this screenplay, and then it becomes a fiction, and then it's the craft of screenwriting that preoccupies you, not your grief or your sadness or whatever else. And then you're making the movie, and it's the same thing. You as a craftsperson takes over. The craft is what you're dealing with. You're being a movie maker, and that's the distance that you have, and I think you have to have distance. You can't be wallowing in your grief or whatever it is that you're obsessed with, even if it's a political thing, and you can't be completely swallowed up by your, let's say, your rage at something that you feel is unjust. There has to be some distance for you to really create anything that is alive.
Not only has this given me a brand new way of going back and enjoying Cronenberg's work all over again with a fresh eye and a new understanding of what his themes are, but it has given me a new way of looking at art in general, and that is the sign of a true artist. There is only one Cronenberg, and although he has many imitators and has surely inspired a new generation of filmmakers and paved the way for them to be accepted and praised by the mainstream, with the Shrouds, his work continued to evolve and discuss new ideas, using his life experience and skill as a storyteller to craft a movie that significantly represents the moment that we are living in as a species and the moment we are living in human history.
Can you see? I can see what's happening to her. I'm in the grave with her.
And not only that, but he is asking questions and making movies that thrill me just as much as they have done. And he's expanding on these themes that have affected his work and career since the very beginning and since I began watching him as a spectator when I was a young film fan.
There comes a time when a child learns that the child will not live forever. When you're a kid, why would you think of such a thing? And even worse, that your parents won't live forever and your sister or brother won't live forever. That's pretty difficult. I mean, that's a major turning point in any human's life, and we all go through it. My understanding of human existence is body is reality. I mean, that's a mantra that I created in my last movie, Crimes of the Future. Body is reality. Our reality is our body. And once you start with that, and then you consider that death is inevitable, and if you're an atheist like me, you consider that death is oblivion. I mean, it is the end of you. You disappear. We put all that together, and you have my movies.
Is The Shrouds my favourite Cronenberg film? No, not by a long shot. It's dialogue heavy, suffers from a lower budget than his previous great-looking work, Crimes of the Future. The cast in The Shrouds is solid, but I wouldn't say they're great. But as a work of cinema by a master of the craft, who is one of the best storytellers and groundbreakers in horror movie history, who is revolutionary in terms of his intelligence, ideas, and approach to genre filmmaking, I would say it's fresher, more relevant, and more important than any other work of horror I have seen in a very, very long time.
My God, that's really her. That's, an image of your wife's decaying body.
Yes.
The Shrouds is the work of a filmmaker who knows exactly what they want to say and exactly how they want to get that point across, technologically but also artistically. If you're a Cronenberg fan, you'll love it, and if you like cinema designed to explore the human condition, I think this movie is going to grow on you. Or should I say, I think the Shrouds will grow around you and then inside of you.
The death of a loved one is completely A, impossible, and B, meaningless. These are two things that's very difficult to accept. So, in order to endure that, you often find that people try to assign some meaning to what has happened. Of course, it could be religious, God wanted you, your husband, whatever. But there's the other more interesting thing to me is the part that feels that something happened that should not have happened. It should not have been allowed to happen because it's impossible. And that means that maybe there was something going on. Was it the doctors? Was it the hospital? Was it a love affair that you didn't know about? And the other thing is that when someone dies close to you, you have a tendency to feel some kind of guilt somehow, and also the feeling that there were things that did not get said that should have been said. And all of this is ripe for the development of some kind of theory of conspiracy. And I think every conspiracy theory partly comes from a desire to empower yourself. You know what's really going on that other people do not know. That makes you very special. And the other thing is that it gives you some defense against what might happen because of that. And also, it assigns a meaning. We have really evolved to look for meaning everywhere. And when there is no meaning, we're going to invent it somehow.
Thanks for listening to my take on the Shrouds. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all my channel members and Patreon supporters. And if you aren't already, please consider supporting the channel by becoming a member here on YouTube, or help support independent content creation here in the Boneyard by dropping a super thanks or checking out the store tab for new merch coming soon. And most importantly, hit subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and let me know your thoughts on the career and work of David Cronenberg in the comments below. And let's keep this conversation about the Shrouds and his work going, because it's your contribution that keeps me digging up classics right here in the Boneyard. Take care, everyone, and as always, thank you all so much for listening.
How would you like your legacy to be viewed, or how would you view it?
Oh, I'm not worried about it. Once I'm dead, it's not going to be a problem. It's coming along fine. I'll accept the body horror.